At the beginning of the movie, we're introduced to a former CIA director named Robert, who is practicing shooting in the middle of the woods. After retiring from the CIA, Robert chose to live in a compound called Ford's Retreat. Ford's Retreat is a highly secretive compound. It's located in the middle of the woods and is heavily guarded by the military. Everyone who lives there is a retired member of the military, CIA, Secret Service, or a former spy who once dealt with major mafia organizations. That's why the government provides the place as a safe location for them to spend their retirement. If they lived outside, there's a chance that enemies from their past would come after them again. The scene then shifts to a man named Paul, who is on his way somewhere. Paul turns out to be Robert's biological son. His goal now is to go to the Ford's Retreat compound to meet Robert, his father. However, without Paul realizing it, his location has already been tracked, and he's been watched from a distance by a team of mercenaries. The mercenary team then quickly moves to pursue Paul. At this point, it's still unclear who ordered them to do it or why they're after Paul.
Neutralize anybody that stands in your way.
Not long after, Paul arrives at the compound. A guard immediately approaches him and asks why he has come there. Paul explains that he's Robert's son. So, of course, he's there to see his father. After hearing his explanation, the guard finally allows Paul to enter, but only by himself. Meanwhile, Paul's driver has to wait outside the compound. Once inside, Paul meets the head of security there, a sexy woman named Kate. Kate then escorts Paul to meet Robert, and the two of them start walking. Along the way, Kate explains that the compound is very heavily guarded, so not just anyone is allowed to enter.
Retreat.
Marketing lingo. Well, I'm sure you two have quite a lot.
I've imagined my dad living in a place like that.
Meanwhile, Paul's driver decides to go look for a nearby settlement while waiting for Paul to finish his business. But along the way, Paul's driver is suddenly stopped by the group of mercenaries who had been watching Paul earlier. The mercenary leader immediately asks, "Where's Paul now?" Because Paul's GPS signal disappeared right at that location. At first, Paul's driver refuses to give them any information because he doesn't know them at all. However, the mercenary leader immediately grabs Paul's driver by the throat and forces him to say where Paul went. After being pressured repeatedly, the driver finally says that Paul is at a compound in the middle of the woods not far from there. Even after getting the answer they wanted, the mercenaries still kill Paul's driver.
Hey, wait!
Back to Paul, who has now met Robert, his father, after Kate escorted him there. Kate then excuses herself and leaves Paul alone with Robert. Robert looks extremely happy and emotional because he hasn't seen Paul in almost 5 years. Once they're inside, Paul explained that he's been trying to find Robert all this time, but was never able to locate him. Luckily, Paul finally got the address from one of Robert's former colleagues from when Robert was still the CIA director. Robert then asks why Paul came to see him. Paul says that he wants to borrow $5 million because his company is on the verge of bankruptcy. Paul knows that Robert has a lot of savings, so he believes Robert is the only person who can help him right now. After hearing the request, Robert doesn't immediately agree to lend him the money. He first asks Paul to explain what kind of business he's running.
Real time, huh?
My entire existence resides in the ether, but as a major player in the global financial marketplace.
The scene shifts to the mercenary team, who are now quietly approaching the compound. They manage to get inside after breaking through the wire fence using a back route. Once inside, the mercenary leader realizes that the compound is filled with CCTV cameras. Because of that, they have to move more carefully. The leader then explains that their real target is Robert, and they have to bring Robert back alive. Not long after, a guard notices that the fence in the back has been breached. One of the mercenaries quickly kills the guard without thinking about the CCTV cameras nearby.
Stand down. It's that bullshit.
Base, we have a problem.
As a result, the whole thing is clearly caught on CCTV. The operator in the underground room realizes that their compound has been infiltrated. The mercenary leader, who is revealed to be named Ulysses, immediately kills his own man for acting too recklessly.
Anyone on this team compromises.
Back to Paul and Robert, who are still continuing their conversation. After hearing Paul's full explanation, Robert finally agrees to give Paul $5 million instead of just lending it to him. But at the same time, they're startled by the security alarm going off extremely loudly. Robert immediately tells Paul to stay inside the house and not go outside. Meanwhile, Robert goes outside to check what's happening. Outside the house, Ulysses is seen holding two former spies hostage. Ulysses shows him a photo of Robert and asks which house Robert lives in. However, the two former spies refuse to give him any information. When they still refuse to answer, Ulysses immediately kills them both. The scene then shifts to Kate, the head of security, who now has to face one of Ulysses' men. Just as the man is about to shoot Kate, suddenly, it turns out Robert kills the man first. After that, Robert tells Kate to take Paul to the underground room while he tries to deal with the criminals. Kate immediately goes inside the house and takes Paul toward the underground room. However, to get there, they still have to deal with several of Ulysses' men. After Kate manages to kill Ulysses' men who are blocking their way, she continues heading toward the underground room with Paul. Since the entrance to the room is quite far away, they have to cross a river first. But at the same time, two of Ulysses' men appear again and immediately point their guns at them. Kate and Paul can only raise their hands because they no longer have any weapons. But suddenly, it turns out Robert and a special forces captain named Blaine are the ones who kill the two men. Robert then asks Blaine to take Paul and Kate to the underground room. Before they leave, Blaine assumes that Paul is Kate's boyfriend. Paul, who finds Kate very sexy, simply goes along with Blaine's assumption. Meanwhile, Robert chooses to return to the compound to deal with the enemies who have arrived. Blaine eventually manages to escort Paul and Kate to the entrance of the underground room. Kate immediately takes Paul inside.
Welcome to the fortress.
Once inside, Paul is surprised to see that the room is actually very large and equipped with all kinds of advanced equipment. Kate explains that the place is a secret room as well as the operations room for the compound above. If the compound is no longer safe, everyone will be moved to that room because it also serves as their last line of defense. After that, Kate introduces Paul to a general named Barbara, who is in charge of both the room and the compound above. Barbara tells Paul to get some rest while she and the others help Robert deal with the intruders. Meanwhile, Ulysses and one of his men are surrounded by several guards. Even with several guns pointed at him, Ulysses looks completely relaxed. From the monitor room, Barbara realizes that it's actually a trap. The rest of Ulysses' men are already positioned at different angles, ready to kill the guards. Barbara immediately orders the guards to retreat, but it's already too late. In the end, all the guards are killed by Ulysses' men attacking from different angles. At the same time, Ulysses looks surprised when he sees his boss arrive, the man who ordered him to capture Robert. The man is revealed to be Balzari, a powerful Mafia boss. Balzari immediately orders Ulysses to continue the search because he's sure they'll be able to capture Robert soon. The scene then shifts to Robert, who now enters the underground room. Robert explains that some of the compound's residents have already been killed, while he has moved the remaining residents to a safe place. Meanwhile, there are only 5 guards left. Clearly, that's not enough to take on an entire mercenary force. Barbara, who is a general, then asks who these people really are and whether Robert knows them. Robert says that he does know them, and that they definitely came there to hunt him down. The mercenary force is led by Balzari, a Mafia boss who was Robert's enemy in the past. Barbara then asks why Balzari is hunting Robert. Robert explains that when he was still the CIA director, he destroyed several of Balzari's businesses and seized all of his money, which totaled $600 million. However, Robert deliberately didn't turn all the money over to government, and instead chose to hide it somewhere. Only Robert can unlock the place where the money is being kept. That's why Balzari is hunting Robert now, to get back all the money Robert once seized from him. Back at the compound, Captain Blaine continues fighting and manages to kill 2 of Ulysses' men.
Locked and loaded.
Soldier.
Meanwhile, Balzari contacts Barbara using one of the guards' radios. Balzari asks Barbara to hand Robert over to him. Once he gets Robert, Balzari promises to leave the place. However, Barbara refuses because she feels she still has forces that can be used to fight Balzari. At the same time, Robert considers turning himself in so no one else gets hurt. Of course, Barbara stops him and tells Robert to stay there. After that, Paul apologizes because he thinks those people were able to find the place by following him. Robert tells Paul not to feel bad because Robert himself had already predicted that something like this would eventually happen. Meanwhile, Ulysses and his men begin attacking the 5 remaining guards. Ulysses easily manages to kill all 5 guards. Now only Captain Blaine is left, and he's hiding in the middle of the woods. A few moments later, Kate and the operator team see that Ulysses and his men have managed to enter the underground room. Kate immediately tells the general, so everyone can get ready. Ulysses and his men easily kill the 2 guards at the entrance to the secret room. After that, Ulysses uses a grenade to blow open the door. With no other choice, Robert finally heads into the hallway to surrender himself to Ulysses first. Ulysses and his men then point their guns at Robert. But just as Robert is about to be taken away, Barbara, Kate, and the others suddenly arrive and point their guns back at Ulysses. It turns out that Robert surrendering himself was just part of his plan to trap Ulysses. However, when one of Barbara's men is about to shoot Ulysses, Barbara shoots her own man instead and takes Paul hostage. It turns out Barbara is a traitor who has been working with Balzari all along. The situation immediately turns around. Now Robert's team is the one cornered again. Not long after, Balzari arrives, clapping as he watches the chaos unfold. After that, Balzari beats Robert and the others until they lose consciousness. When they wake up, Robert, Paul, and Kate are tied to chairs. Barbara then comes over and apologizes to Robert. Barbara admits that she's doing all of this for the money. Balzari had previously promised to give Barbara a 20% cut if she successfully helped capture Robert. However, Robert says that's never going to happen because he knows exactly how deceitful Balzari is. Not long after, Balzari comes over and wakes Paul up. Balzari then tells Paul to hand over all of his company's assets to him. It turns out Balzari doesn't just want to get back his $600 million, but also wants to take over Paul's company.
Rise and shine, Paul. How do we fix it?
Out of fear, Paul immediately opens his laptop and prepares to transfer all the company's money to Balzari's account. Even though Paul's company is on the verge of bankruptcy, Paul explains that the transfer process will take about 15 minutes. Paul promises to transfer all the company's money on the condition that he and Kate are allowed to leave. As for Robert, Paul says he won't get involved even though Robert is his biological father. Balzari eventually agrees to the request, and Paul immediately begins transferring all of his company's money. As agreed, Balzari then releases Paul and Kate and tells Ulysses to take them toward the river. Before leaving, Paul whispers to his father that he'll definitely come back to save Robert. After Paul leaves, Balzari approaches Robert and begins torturing him. Balzari forces Robert to tell him where all of his money is being kept. However, Robert would rather die than tell Balzari where the money is. Since Robert is the only person who knows where the money is being kept, Balzari ultimately keeps him alive. Balzari will find another way to make Robert give him the information he wants.
Excruciating.
The scene then shifts to Paul and Kate, who have now reached the river with Ulysses escorting them. There, Paul suddenly pretends to fall. When Ulysses tries to help him, Kate immediately attacks Ulysses from behind. While waiting for Ulysses to get back up, Kate quickly unties Paul's arms. Once Paul is free, the two of them immediately attack Ulysses together. Meanwhile, Barbara, the corrupt general, asks Balzari for a share of the money because she helped capture Robert. However, Balzari, being as deceitful as he is, kills Barbara instead. After killing Barbara, Balzari returns to the room where Robert is being held to interrogate him once again. This time, Balzari points a gun at Robert and swears he won't hesitate to shoot him if Robert still refuses to give him the information. At the same time, there's suddenly an explosion, which turns out to have been caused by Captain Blaine. Because of the explosion, Robert manages to free his hands. Once he's free, Robert immediately helps Blaine kill Balzari's men who are there.
Only lasted a week.
When Balzari realizes that his men are dead, he immediately runs toward the area near the river. However, Robert manages to catch up with him, eventually cornering Balzari. Balzari then challenges Robert to a hand-to-hand fight. Robert refuses because he prefers the quick way. Without wasting any time, Robert shoots Balzari, sending him falling into the water.
But
The scene shifts to Kate and Paul, who now enter the weapons room. Their goal is to get some weapons and then go save Robert. They do this because they don't know that Robert has actually already managed to save himself. However, because Paul can't resist how sexy Kate looks, he ends up asking Kate to have some fun. Just as things are about to get good, without them realizing it, one of Balzari's men has been hiding in the room the whole time. The man then comes out and immediately points his gun at Kate and Paul. The two of them have no choice but to surrender, but suddenly it turns out Robert is the one who kills the man. After that, Robert takes Kate and Paul in a car to go pick up Captain Blaine. Kate and Paul are starting to fall in love with each other. The two of them then decide to start dating. At the end of the movie, it's revealed that Balzari actually isn't dead. Balzari gets back up while holding a knife. So, it looks like this movie will have a sequel, but for now, the story is to be continued.